In this tutorial, we're going to look at basic animation in 3ds Max. With any animation, you've got to decide first of all how many frames to animate and what frames per second you're focusing on. So to set that up, we click on the time configuration down here, and we're going to specify, I'm going to put in a custom frames per second of 25 frames per second. And I'm going to set how many frames I want. So let's say I want 175 frames. And go OK. That gives me, in my timeline, I have 175 frames. Let's change that to something shorter. Let's go back in. I'm going to set it down. For what I'm doing here is just 50 frames. Click OK. And I've now just got 50 frames in my timeline. Easiest way to animate in 3ds Max is to turn on Auto Key, and this will record any changes you make to an object's position, scale, rotation, etc. On the timeline. So if I go, let's say, ahead to 20 frames, and I'm going to move this box down to meet the ground. Something like that. I can play my animation, and we can see that animation is now going nice and smoothly. If I hit the question mark on my keyboard, that plays it. So if you're familiar with animating in After Effects, you will know about the ease curves where you can change the personality of a motion. So if we go in 3ds Max up to the Graph Editor, Track View, Curve Editor, we can experiment with adjusting the ease curve for this as well. So I'm going to just shrink down my curve editor a little bit, something like that. I can dock it if I wish, but I'm just going to move it over to the side here like that. Let's just do something like this. And when I have an animation in my scene and I have an object selected, any animated properties for that object show up as highlighted in this side panel in the curve editor. In this case, we've got an animation, and it's on the Z position of the box, and we can see that curve visible here in the window. If it's not fully visible, you can select the property and click on frame horizontal or frame vertical to get to see it. So here's our animation, and we can see we've got an ease out and an ease in on these keyframes. So if we want that box to fall more like it's weighted and falling towards the ground, we can change some of these values. So we can take away that ease in for the final keyframe and do something a bit more like this. So now if I play my animation, bump. So, and the more dramatic I drag these curves, the heavier it's going to fall. I can also, of course, move the keyframe positions to my box, bump, down it goes. So that is my curve editor. Let's now look at doing something else with our animation. So if I go to my, we got an extra keyframe there we don't want. So you can see that these keyframes are showing up as red on my timeline, and that's because we've got position keyframes. Let's do a rotation keyframe as well. So I'm going to turn on Auto Key, and I'm going to go to the second keyframe, and I'm going to rotate that box by 90 degrees. So, oops, I've deleted my animation there by mistake. So let's do it very, very quickly. Go to the second keyframe. I'm going to do a 90 degree. Let's turn on our snap rotation. 90 degree rotation, as well as a position change. So I'm going to change my view momentarily to front and do something like that. Okay, so we now have an animation with position and rotation. You can see our keyframes, we've got a red and a green now, and we can play and down it comes. Again, I can select the rotation and position for the box. You can see they're both showing up now. So depending on which I select, it's going to come up like that. So let's go into the keyframes and take the easy ease out of them. So I'm going to say the rotation is going to happen gradually, getting faster and faster, and the position, likewise, we're just going to adjust the curve like that. So now our animation, if we play it, boom, does exactly what we want it to do. And that's the introductory to AutoKey and the graph editor in 3ds Max. In the next tutorial, we'll look at parenting and hierarchies with animation.